Stay tuned because next up is David Charles Allen, Village Properties Realtor and host of The Hop. That's Home Ownership Podcast, here to tell us about real estate in Santa Barbara.
Welcome to The Hop. This is David Charles Allen, Realtor at Village Properties in Santa Barbara, California, with my great friend and co-host, Patti Teal. I'm doing wonderful today, Patti. How you doing?
I'm doing great, David. Thank you.
That's good. We got a little more rain on the way. As many people are aware, Santa Barbara got a pretty big storm these last couple of days, and we're just kind of recovering from that, and looks like we have another one headed to us this weekend, so we'll see how that unfolds.
Yeah, so we record a couple of days before it airs, so the rain, I think, is expected on Saturday. So if you're listening to the show, you might be in on a very rainy day.
Yeah, it could be rainy, that's for sure. I heard somewhere it's going to be worse, but it doesn't seem that way, but I honestly have no idea.
Yeah, it must have just scared some people to death, especially those who were close to the mudslides in Montecito. And the fact that it was 5 years to the day of when the previous storm hit is just unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, it was saying we got 10 inches up in the mountains, so that's a lot of water. Well, there's a lot of streets that were flooded, just not even that had to do with the mountains. Like we had several streets downtown. One of the underpasses was in 10 feet of water. The freeways were closed both directions for like a day. It was just a lot of flooding going on, just so much water and nowhere to go.
They kept replaying a news story of someone who was kayaking around his neighborhood. And my son reminded me that there was a storm many years ago. I wouldn't even remember when. Kids were out on their surfboards in the city, kind of under the freeway. They probably shouldn't have been after a big storm.
Yeah, it was definitely possible in some areas, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, we hope that everybody is staying safe, and that's where David and I are putting our thoughts.
Definitely. There wasn't really much surf these last couple of days because the storm hasn't been really a clean day yet. You never really know when a storm comes in. Sometimes it's like a super gentle rain and there's actually waves. With this last storm, I don't expect that happening. So maybe we'll get some waves once this one passes.
That would be a positive that could come out of it. And of course, we were in a drought for so long. So at least there's rain running and coming down. And I've even heard in Nevada, Lake Mead is filling up again. So hopefully in the long run, it'll do a lot of good.
Yeah, definitely. As long as it's all not running just into the ocean and we get all the lakes are kind of filling up and everything like that, then I think it's a huge positive in that regard.
Yeah. And I know they've done a lot to try to shore up the gullies, and I'm probably not saying it correctly, but to make it safer for the mudslides not to happen. But I know Mother Nature is a formidable foe, and I don't know if people can quite predict what will happen when the storms get very, very severe.
Yeah, you can never predict it, and people always are going to keep building in fire areas and flood areas, and it's kind of just the cycle, it seems like, too, where I think in other cities, like even like Louisiana, it's below sea level, and people keep building it up, and hurricanes keep coming every once in a while.
I know you will give the real estate stats momentarily, but it probably affected the stats as there weren't as many showings on the rainy days.
Yeah, it didn't affect it that much in comparison to the last couple of weeks because it's been so slow already. I think it's just been a wild year altogether in 2022. Now we're in 2023. Started at interest rates beginning of 2022 in the 3-4% range. We've kind of shot up and shot down all throughout the year. We're up to 5.875 for conforming now and 5.125 for 30-year jumbo. So that's a huge change even from last week. We're in the low sixes. So again, we've just kind of been going up and down all year. But the start of this year was really amazing rates in the 3 to 4% range.
Oh, well, thanks for reviewing the year. It makes us thoughtfully think back on all that's happened this last year.
It's been a huge change. And I think we started the year just, again, a really hot market. Everyone was really enthusiastic about coming here, staying here. Supply couldn't stay on the market. In the beginning of the year, we had about 200 supply of homes and probably even close to 150 at certain points in time. And we haven't built it up that much, but our supply right now is around 300. But again, that's a huge, significant difference in comparison to last year.
Absolutely. And things then were just selling like hotcakes too.
They were. We didn't really see a start of a slowdown until around April or June. I mean, things really haven't slowed down completely. That's not saying that, but they have pumped the brakes in terms of price changes and everyone just buying whatever comes on the market. But we saw a really good run for the first half of this last year in continuation with the last couple of years. And now it's kind of returning to a more balanced market.
And is that your prediction for 2023, David? If I would ask you to give one, that it will just continue to be a more balanced market?
Predictions are so hard. It's really dependent on so many different factors. I say what I know now, it seems like a more balanced market, and whatever comes is going to always change how people react. And it's really going to be dependent on so many factors. So to be able to predict something, it's very difficult to do. I think you have to just go with what you're feeling.
Go with the flow, yes.
Go with what you're feeling, and if you can afford it, and look at the factors that are most important to you. There's some people think if interest rates keep going up, then it's going to happen. Something else is going to happen if we're going to go into a recession or whatnot. So I think you got to believe what you're going to believe about what your future predictions are, and then ask questions about how that would impact the housing market. Because if you think one way, you're able to describe that to your agent, then they can say like, well, if this happens, then this is what would typically happen in a housing market. So.
Right. And so if people would want to get a hold of you, David, to get your input, how would they do that?
Yeah, my number is 805-617-9311. And my email is david@davidcharlesallen.com.
Thank you, David. If you don't mind, I thought we could move on to talk about our pooches and our fur babies. And a listener sent me a very interesting article.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay. So the article was called Pause for Thought. It was published in The Economist in December. And I know you and I love our dogs so much. This article particularly talked about various dog breeds and how their popularity changes over time. In fact, the subtitle was called A Dog is a Man's Best Friend, but People Are Fickle. So breeds spring in and out of fashion. So it was really interesting. They talked about the reasons why a breed of dog will be particularly fashionable. So I guess back in the day of World War I, the Germans were promoting German Shepherds as a symbol of their national unity. And when they did that, it trashed their popularity in the United States until Rin Tin Tin. There was a show before your time, David. I maybe even before mine, but I do remember seeing reruns of Rin Tin Tin. And he was kind of like a lassie dog. He was just an amazing dog. And then it made German Shepherds become the most popular dog in the US.
I don't doubt it. It's so crazy, the marketing and the things you see and you didn't realize you see, and how much influence that has over your decision and where you take your life.
Well, isn't that true? And then similarly, when the Peanuts comic strip was in its most popular era, the dog like Snoopy became very, very popular. So that's so funny. And then you probably have noticed you see a lot more Frenchies around. And a lot of that is because some of the famous influencers and stars like Reese Witherspoon and Lady Gaga have their Frenchies.
Yeah, it's crazy how much influence they have over some people. And you don't even realize it either.
It's kind of subtle.
It's very subtle.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And
I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Yeah. My husband years ago had a product placement business, and they would place a star wearing a certain type of sunglasses or sitting in front of a computer or drinking a certain kind of soda. And they paid for that placement because it really works.
Oh, yeah. I think there used to be something in the movie theaters back in the day where they would flash an advertisement to Coca-Cola, but it'd be so quick that your eyes couldn't see it, but your brain would process it.
Oh, right. Like that subliminal marketing, I believe is what they call it.
Yeah, and that used to happen in movie theaters. But yeah, the product placement too, that you'll see, they pay big money for that as well.
Yeah, they sure do. And then let's see, another thing they said in this article is there's also the practicality issue. So they talked about in Japan, 3 of the most popular breeds are little breeds, the toy poodle, the chihuahua, and the dachshund.
Yeah, so, I can see that too.
I wonder if that's the same in New York.
Right? Yeah, everyone's tight on space.
People with their little places. But I think even from moving across the country from Santa Barbara to Fort Myers, I think there's really a big difference. And then I lived in Arizona in between, different parts of our own country and the breeds that are popular.
Oh, yeah. Every breed has its kind of usages as well. So maybe in the snow, you need more like a snow dog, hunting dog or something like that, or a basset hound or something. It's all dependent on what the use is or if it's just for part of your family.
Right. And the attitude. I mean, I just see a lot of really, really big dogs around here.
You're in Florida. Why not?
Why not? Anything goes. Yeah. They talked also about whoever wins the American Kennel Club Westminster Dog Show, that breed skyrockets.
Yeah, I believe that too. I mean, you gotta have big dogs in Florida with the big snakes and crocodiles around.
Well,
so.
that's true. That's true. Less likely to get eaten by an alligator.
Very true.
Yeah. So the article did not talk about the popularity of the pound puppies, but of course, they're not one breed. They're all sorts of breeds. It really wasn't what the article was about. But I hope that people, if they are getting a pet, really do look at those dogs that are at the shelters because there are amazing animals.
Yeah, they really are. They'll just be so caring that you brought them home and gave them a good life. So they're very appreciative.
They sure are. And I used to think that maybe the dogs that ended up there were a little troubled. And I'm sure there are some who have been abused or are troubled. But in general, when I've been volunteering at the shelters, there are some of the sweetest animals there.
Yeah, they definitely sometimes have a little more trauma that you have to work through with them, but they're definitely one of the best things that you can bring home. That's
yeah. And I remember this last year, since we're doing the year in review and we did it in real estate, but when people were sheltering at home because of COVID, so many of them adopted dogs and cats that there weren't even dogs to adopt anymore. But unfortunately, I have heard as COVID has improved, which is a good thing, of course, a lot of people are not adopting as much now.
Yeah, I think the one downside to that was people weren't living in the future. They were living in the now. They didn't realize like once everything passed that they have to go back to work and now their dog stays at home for 8 hours and they don't have anyone to watch them. So I heard some stories where a lot of dogs had to go back up for adoption. But I've also heard a lot of huge positive stories where people never were expecting to get a dog, got one during those times. And it's just been a life changer for them too. And they do everything with it. They take it to work. And I mean, there's a lot of positives behind that as well.
Yeah, that is heartwarming. And the fact that more and more people are able to work from home does make it wonderful for them to have a dog. Hopefully they can do a better job than I do. You probably often hear my dog barking in the background. I'm teaching him to not bark.
I think, yeah, you can only do so much. The dog's going to have its own personality.
Right. Well, David, I just love this show. Thank you so much for the year in review and the recent statistics. Just everything that you share with us. I hope we have keep you coming on the show this year because you have so much to share. And again, it's also the HOP Home Ownership Podcast. And one more time, would you give your contact information?
Yeah, my number is 805-617-9311. And my email is david@davidcharlesallen.com.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, Patti. It's going to go next week.
We sure will. Bye-bye now.
Bye.